Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is the place we gather every single day to help anyone and everyone who shows up learn more about modern web-based production. You can submit your questions about media creation, distribution, and all of its forms. You can do that 24/7. The simple rules are one question per submission, and remember, someone's going to be reading it aloud on the air, so try to keep things simple and clear. If you use our Mukana system, you can not only put questions into the show, but you can vote on those questions. And that's kind of how we prioritize the topics we talk about, particularly at the start of the show. The questions with the most votes get prioritized, and we talk about them in more depth. If you want, though, you can also use the the QR code, which is this one showing up in the bottom of the screen right now. Shoot that. It'll take your phone or device or whatever else you have that reads QR codes, and it'll take you directly into the question queue where you can pose your questions there. That's a quick way to kind of interact with the show. Those are the rules. Let's dive right in. Alexander, what are our viewers and listeners most interested in today?
Our first question comes from the QR code, Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. How does the quality of the Behringer SL84C dynamic cardioid mic compare to the Shure SM58?
And Alexander Knight's going to start us off this morning. Alexander, what do you think?
Well, I haven't used the 84C, but with so many choices on the market, you have to consider more than just sound quality, of course, self-noise, handling noise as well. What I've found with a lot of cheaper mics, not always, there are some cheaper mics that are fine, but a lot of them seem to have a lot more handling noise, which is not really what you want when you're performing. The whole point of it is that you're holding a microphone, so you don't really want the handling noise going through the microphone into the PA. And with so many great choices like these, now since you're in the US, Chester, I'll point you to Sweetwater here, but the SE Electronics V7 has become a very popular microphone. It's about $30, $40 cheaper than the SM58. Both great choices. Of course, the SM58 is the ubiquitous classic that we all know and love. The V7 is a very nice sounding, natural sounding microphone, not a lot of mud in the low end. So it's become my new favorite for a vocal microphone, and it's $99 US right now on Sweetwater. So that's one option there. And the other thing about it, if I'll just zoom in on the microphone, when I first saw this, when I picked up the microphone, I thought these guys really know design. The beveled edges on that ring help that microphone prevent it from rolling off a table or rolling off the stage. So that is a really nice design touch. Of course, you also have Lewitt. They make a dynamic microphone for $129. That's another choice. Mojave recently started making dynamic microphones. They're well known for making condenser microphones. Actually, they fought this for years because David Royer, the one of the co-owners who's famously invented some of the most amazing ribbon microphones, always hated dynamic microphones, but they finally made a dynamic microphone that they like. So this is the new MAD cardioid dynamic mic for $179. So those are just a few choices for you. I would look at these before you look at the Behringer one.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, one thing, the Behringer has them all beat on is price, because the Behringer, $15, which is something that, you could give to that screamer guy that likes to swing the microphone around and helicopter the mic on the end of the cable, and then slam it down on the stage, or for your rappers that like to do the mic drop at the end of their rap session. It'd be perfect for that kind of stuff. It does say right here on its website that it is a shock mount system, greatly lowers overall handling noise. So they have taken that into account. And I might point out that the SM58 patents have long run out. They've been producing that mic for over 60 years, probably 100 years by now. So the patents have all run out. So Behringer has been known to copy cheaply what other manufacturers have been producing. And since they're not inhibited by patent infringement here, they could probably do a pretty close copy of the SM58. I've had a pile copy of the SM58, and what they did on that one is they cheaped out. They don't put a transformer inside, so it's really this similar cardioid capsule, but it's not balanced. It doesn't go through a balancing transformer before it goes out, and so it's an unbalanced mic. And they don't say whether this is balanced or unbalanced in the specification. So I kind of wonder if they did the same thing here.
I'm kind of flabbergasted that you can offer anything for sale that has some machining and or electronic components for that kind of money. I mean, when you think about if you know, cost of goods sold, marketing, transportation, all the rest of those things, there must be, what, a couple of dollars worth of parts in there at best, and the assembly lines must be pretty automated to be able to crank out a whole bunch of microphones and make money at a $14 price point.
Just the cost of the magnets would be more than $15.
You would think. Now, maybe they're buying in bulk, and maybe this is a bulk play, and you know, none of us have any experience with this microphone. So maybe if you're just using it in the circumstance like we are, and you put it in a mount, you don't touch it and rattle it around, maybe it produces an acceptable sound. We don't know. But I would definitely, I mean, you know, you're risking $14, $15, I guess probably maybe 20 with shipping. So if you're really on a tight budget, it might be worthwhile to try one. Worst comes to worst, it's not more than a fast food meal that you're risking here. So good luck. Next question.
David Brady in New York is asking, Bloomberg reports that Apple is developing a tabletop device with a robotic arm, an iPad on a Snowball iMac, or something cool like Guy's Radio Shack Armatron. Have they lost their way? Thoughts?
Courtney, what do you think?
No, they're just behind everybody else. You know, these, if it's what they describe, and we haven't seen it yet, you know, the Echo show has been around. This is the third generation of one little robotic, like an iPad on a little robotic arm that follows you around. Also, there's the Facebook portal, which was another one like this from 3 or 4 years ago. So I guess Apple wants in on that market somewhat to do all these Zoom calls that are out there at a more reasonable price, and something that'll run iOS so you can run your iOS apps on it. So maybe that's what they're going for, but they're a little late into the game. I think if that's what it is, we don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nobody knows. And here's my take on it. And for years and years, for almost a decade, we've been hearing about an Apple car, maybe. And whenever I thought about that, I thought, boy, that's a really weird play. But maybe they're using it to research all the things in cars and driving that you need to control in order to operate a mechanical device remotely. So actuator motors and things that just a ton of technology. So sometimes what it seems to me Apple does is they open these divisions, they do a lot of research, and then that research ends up in other things. I'm wondering whether, now that they have the iPad multicam system, if they are thinking about small device actuation like the 360 little webcams and things like that. I'm wondering if they're building out an ecosystem of remote production that also has a pan, tilt, zoom-y kind of thing in it. I don't know. This is all speculation. You don't know. I just know that Apple has a lot of people in their company. It's just interesting to see what's going on. I would love to have a day, just like everybody else who pays attention to Apple. I'd love to have a day in the research labs, and just to see how far out are they thinking. And maybe they're not designing for a product now, but maybe they're designing for a future that they are envisioning that may or may not come true. It's a fascinating thing to watch the development of all these devices. So much has changed in the last 5 years. I can't imagine, with the new pace of AI and everything else coming into it, how much we're going to see in terms of change on the next 5 years. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana is asking, what do you think of a hospital network getting into the film business? Are there any risks to their brand? There's a WSJ article there, but it's behind a paywall.
Yeah, a Wall Street Journal is famous for that. Jesse, your thoughts?
Every business has to deal with front-facing communications. It's what we specialize in our company. And this is a hospital that ran the numbers and realized that it was easier to handle front-facing communications in video format. Easier if they, internalize the team instead of outsourcing the team. Hospitals are businesses just like any other. A cynic might call this their propaganda arm. I'm not a cynic because this is how, my family eats, is helping companies get their messaging out in video format.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, here in Hollywood, They've been doing this for years. The old Queen of the Angels Hospital has been used for decades now, since they declared it unfit for use as a hospital because of asbestos in the walls and ceiling, and the cost of mitigation was so high that they just rented out to movie studios to use as a hospital. And it's been used in Scrubs and a bunch of other TV shows. So for use like that, it makes sense to use it as a movie set, as long as you don't associate the name of the hospital necessarily, unless you could do use the name of the hospital and do a dramatic show like that inside a decommissioned hospital of some sort, or a wing of a hospital if they can't. There are a lot of hospitals that they build out wings of the hospital, but they can't afford to operate them these days because the operating expenses are so much. So they could just dedicate that wing to film production. And I've worked in hospitals like that are working hospitals and part of the hospital, but one wing is sectioned off, and they use that just for movie production. So it makes perfect sense. I wouldn't necessarily, there's a lot of documentary shows, reality shows of, trauma centers, things like that. But that gets into dangerous insurance problems. And if one piece of film equipment interferes with, saving someone's life, you've got a multi-million-dollar lawsuit on your hands, and it becomes quickly a liability, especially if it's associated with the name of the hospital.
My take on this is that our language is changing. I'm talking less about TV and less about radio and video, and I'm talking now primarily about content creation, because that's where the eyeballs are. In fact, in our second hour guest, that's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, because short-form content is having a renaissance. Long-form content is having a renaissance, but in a different way. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the second hour. But it's interesting how producers are having to deal with, it's not the same environment it was before. And I think in all businesses, and hospitals certainly are in this category, Courtney and Jesse, we're talking about content, talking about public facing. Every business, every operation, business, charities, everybody else has to figure out how to deal in this new social media world. And one of the things that attracts eyeballs is content. And that means that everybody in all stratas of society has to know a little bit more about the parts of content creation and distribution that put you in front of the public, at least if you want your initiatives to succeed. So I'm not surprised. It's an interesting question. Thanks for bringing it up, Roscoe. Let's go to the next one.
Jesse Kester in Glendale's asking, we have an update on the beauty dish question from August 14th regarding this YouTube video.
Excellent. For those of you who weren't around for that, we showed some big lights, some scoops. Somebody wanted to know what they were. So Jesse, update us.
So what we've got is, I'm going to load up the clip so you can be watching it while we talk. The question was, what are the beauty dishes used in this video? And in the YouTube, the description of the video, there was the list of credits. The director of photography is named Johannes Funk. So I looked him up on LinkedIn, sent him the question, and his response was, thanks. This was my first job as a DP and producer. These lights are called auto lamps, and were made in the German Democratic Republic in the early 60s. You can rent these lights in Berlin, and you can also buy them.
Perfect.
So, there you
well
go.
Done. Well done, everybody, in terms of tracking down the answer. They're lovely props in that case. I would imagine that a light that size would probably have a much brighter lamp than is shown in that video. I'm sure they either dimmed them or relamp them to get them down so that they could show up without blowing out the camera shots when you had three of them and your camera was pointing at them. But regardless, it was a cool look. Courtney, you had additional information?
Well, you probably can't use them in the U.S. because they use tungsten bulbs, which are illegal these days in the U.S. So, those sky pans used to have similar type. There used to be a movie light that was similar to this. This looked like a German light when I looked at it. I went, yeah, that comes from Germany, and it's probably from the 40s. And it's one of those with a big base mogul bulb that screws in the back, and then it has a thing that clips over the light bulb itself that blocks the direct view of the tungsten filament from causing harsh shadows. So it gives you that nice soft look. But yeah, I hadn't seen one around here, so I figured it was from the post-war Germany somewhere. And you probably can't get the bulbs for them anymore, maybe.
Yeah,
Or
not that I
unless you've
would
got a
want to
big
in terms of
supply. At least not
just
here.
power consumption.
Maybe
yeah.
Jim.
It reminds me, my very first professional light kit was an Arri 4-light kit, and when I turned off the lights at the end of every shoot, I had to wait maybe 5 to 7 minutes so that they got cool enough so that I could touch them in bare hands. It was amazing how much of the power went into heat rather than light with those old guys. So same problem here probably. Let's go to the next question.
Another QR code question from Kern in Maine. Sorry if a silly question, but I can't find an answer. On the side of the Osbot Tail Air Remote, there are what looks like charging pins. What does this go into? Thanks.
And Alexander, did you manage to track this down?
I don't know what that goes into, but I did look at it and I kind of blew it up. So it looks like charging is done over USB-C. So this is the back of the remote. And you can clearly see that there's a USB charging point. I'm assuming that Kern is talking about these pins here. And I can't find any information on that product page that explains it. It almost looks like they're magnets. I'm not sure what that is, to be honest with you. But I just wanted to show people what we're looking at here.
Yeah, interesting. It does look like they're contacts, and particularly if they're gold or something like that, they're probably signal-carrying contacts or gold-colored. I mean, it doesn't have to be real gold, but that's usually used for things like that for non-oxidizing connections. So interesting. Courtney, you wanted to weigh in. Do you have a thought?
Well, maybe they have a little dock that it'll slip into and charge, or maybe it has just a proprietary connector like my watch charger does that has magnets on either side that has plugs into USB-C, and then it sucks itself to the back of the thing and holds itself on with those high power magnets. So maybe it's something like that to hold the proprietary charging cord onto it. Or maybe they're planning a dock in the future that you can drop it into that'll keep it charged.
Cool question. Regardless, Kern, thanks for tossing it in. And now I'm sure all of us will keep our eyes open to see if we see it on anything else. Next question.
Another QR code question from Timothy Schultz in Los Angeles, California. What is a good minimal speaker setup for editorial? My goal is to have as little on my desk as possible. I've resisted getting the Mackie Big Knob Studio and a pair of Yamaha HS5s. What USB-C interface for balanced audio? Mac user, thanks.
Alexander, you want to dial into this one as well?
Yeah, so for small speakers, if you're talking as small as humanly possible without sacrificing too much sound quality, I would suggest looking at these, the IK Multimedia iLoud micro monitors. I think these are a 3-inch speaker. These actually sound way better than they should for the money, and it's $350 US for the pair. So those are what I would suggest. They have balanced 1/4-inch TRS inputs on the back. They also have Bluetooth. I know a lot of people that use these as a way of also checking their mixes are when they're doing music production, but they sound really good and they have a surprising amount of low end in them. So I would suggest looking at those. For an audio interface, I really like if you don't need anything like loopback, you just need a bare bones interface that is high quality, I would look at the Universal Audio Volt 1, which has a USB-C port on the back, single mic input on the front. These have good quality analog to digital converters and digital to analog converters as well. So I would look at these.
Yeah, those are, I think, substantially smaller than I use, and Alex uses JBL 305s, which are a little powered speaker. I think there are 150 or so each, so two of them is about that same amount at 300. But good luck in finding it. Let us know what you find. Drop back and tell us how they work. Next question.
Next one's from Chad in Toledo. This is a QR code question. What is your workflow for audio transcription when it comes to subtitles? I was recently burned by a less than accurate online service that seemed good to me.
Courtney, you want to start us off?
Well, the go-to is usually Descript, which is very popular and it has a lot of tie-ins to editorial programs that can actually edit your take for you. But for doing transcription, it's highly spoken of, although I can't have to say I've never used it. You do have to be careful about these online transcription services that use humans to transcribe, because a lot of them are set up in foreign countries where the work is cheap. And they may not have English as their first language or whatever language you're translating from. So you got to be careful if it's human translated. AI translation is getting very, very good now. So I'd look for something maybe online you could try that uses AI transcription instead of human. And it also depends on whether or not you need time-coded transcripts. So if you need to submit your video and our audio with timecode on it, to have a transcript generated that has timecode cues along the edge of it so that you can edit or refer to sections of your script or weed out sections of your script based on timecode. That has to come in very handy. And only a few transcription services handle time-coded transcripts.
Jesse Kester.
For the subtitle transcription, we use Resolve's Auto Transcribe as a starter. This does not give you a usable transcription, and we would, whether we were sending out to a paid service that's humans or a paid service that's AI or doing it in Resolve, we would never assume that what we get back is the final translation. We assume that the Resolve transcription takes about 20 to 25% of our time commitment out of the work of doing subtitles, not more than 50% for sure, because you have to go through line by line and make corrections, and you'd have to go through line by line and make corrections on pretty much any service. I mean, you really live and die by your subtitles. It seems like a minor concern that people push off to the very, very end of a project, but if you're going out to any kind of distribution that matters, the subtitles are just as important as the audio meeting technical specifications or the video meeting technical specifications.
I'm going to support what Jesse said. I'm a Final Cut editor. There's a workflow extension that lives inside Final Cut from Simon Says, which is one of the computer AI driven translation apps. So I just take a sound file off of my extension, throw it up there in about 5 minutes. It translates it and comes back. But as Jesse said, even if it has 99.9% accurate translation, that means that theoretically, one word out of every 100 is going to be mistranslated or something. So exactly as Jesse said, I never accept that as the final that's going onto my screens. I always need to have a human being go through, comb through it, and make sure. They've gotten a lot better. We used to have the big problems of which form of there. Is it T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-I-R? Is it T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E? They all sound the same, so which one are they picking? It's gotten better at stuff like that, at looking at context, but still you have to vet it, particularly if you don't have, in my case, purely clean, really professionally recorded audio, because then you've got slurred speech and things like that, and translating that requires a little more intelligence than some of these AI models have in place. So those are my thinking. I'm with Jesse on that. Always double check things. Jesse, your thoughts?
And please do keep in mind that most people won't use your subtitles, but the people who are using your subtitles are really focused on your subtitles.
Absolutely. Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth, Virginia is asking, with the current advancements in automation, it is now possible to operate a large number of PTZ cameras and switchers with minimal effort. Can you explain your decision-making process when it comes to seeking assistance from others at your event?
Jesse, you want to deal with this?
This is our general umbrella rule for automation on set, especially like in the world of PTZ. When we think about PTZ, we aren't looking to decrease the number of staff that we have on hand. We're looking to increase the number of cameras that we have on the shoots. So in general, if you can add a camera or two without reducing your staff, go for it, experiment, play, expand your kit and expand your shot options. But we really don't think about it in those terms, and we get a little tight around clients who want to push us in that direction.
Yeah, my only experience with this is cutting multicam in my software, and it was an interesting thing. You talk about live switching in terms of looking through an array of cameras and making good choices about which ones to cut to next, which you see in live production facilities and TV stations and things like that. For me, it was always interesting, no matter how well I did the original switch, the fact that in my software I was saving that and I had the ability to go back and adjust things afterwards, I almost always found ways to improve it. If you're adding additional cameras and you're not adding additional people to look at that content as it flows in and make rational and the best possible decisions as to which camera to go to, I think you end up diminishing your production quality. So it's not just the number of cameras, it's the ability to judge them in real time if you're doing live. If you're doing ISOs of all those and recording them, and you can do like I can with my multicam, and I think a lot of software multicam processes can do, if you can go back and adjust or recut or let me blow away these 3 cuts and do them more precisely in a way that works better with the content, I seem to always do that, and it makes the program better every time I do that. Jesse, you got another thought?
I'm going to say it a little more explicitly. Clients, if you think you're the first person who's come to us saying you want to look like Tony Robbins, but you want a crew of 3, you are not.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but no matter how intelligent they get, there's just so much decision-making in there. And sometimes the magic comes from not the obvious choice, but the third choice because you had a reason that you just popped into your mind for shooting from there rather than from what looked like the obvious choice. Anyway, we could talk about this for hours. We're going to sneak on. I do want to remind you that your questions and your votes on those questions are important here at Office Hours because as you vote up questions that you find most interesting, those get moved up in the queue and we get to them quicker and we spend more time thinking about them. So if you're in the Mukana system, if you came in through the QR code, you're not into that system, but that's one of the reasons you might want to take a look at getting into the Office Hours system through www.officehours.global and learn kind of the back-end process and how to get in and vote. And there's a nice little community every day that forms around the show that they have a discussion about the topics we're talking about, and they also vote questions up and down so we know what's most important to those of you who are watching the show. Next question.
From the QR code, Brian Whitney, New York, is asking, I'm wondering what is the best software workflow for getting a 180-degree VR shot by the Canon 180 lens and R5 onto the Apple Vision Pro headset? Thanks.
Sadly, you happen to show up on the Thursday where Alex is out of town, and he's very, very good at this. He really understands this stuff, and he's usually our go-to answer for exactly how Vision Pro and 180-degree stuff. He's been working in that field for a long time. I am sadly uninformed about this, and I don't think there's anybody on the panel here who has a lot of hours operating 360 and 180 and VR. So, Ryan, I apologize to you. It's just one of those days. Bring your question back on a day when Alex is here, and I'm sure he'll have lots of information for you about what his preferences are in this area, but it's not going to work out today. Our apologies. Next question.
This is from the QR code. Mike in Los Angeles. I have 2 kids, 12 and 9, who want YouTube channels. Is this possible at their age? How can I set this up for them from 0 with a budget based on the concept? Let's see how serious they are. By 0, I mean I have access to a 2018 MacBook Air for this.
Tony Mobley's going to help us out to start off. Tony?
So as a person who started out with a 2012 MacBook Pro at the beginning of the pandemic, I think I do have some insights into this. So based on everything that I've learned thus far from Office Hours, I'm going to suggest that they use Zoom and that they use a software called StreamYard. And I would ask that it be their channel, but you would be the manager of their YouTube account. And that is a way in which they could actually broadcast in Zoom and then share it on YouTube, and that's a good way to go. And it's you're only dealing with the cost of Zoom, which is a pro account is $15, and I don't remember what the cost of StreamYard is, but I know it's not that very expensive. So that's a way that you could actually do that, and you would be the production manager for their channels.
There you go. Jesse Kester, your thoughts?
I don't hew conservative in many ways, but I want you to seriously consider the type of person who would want to be watching a 9-year-old talking about their life in their bedroom. Please seriously consider the type of person that would want to see that type of content, and then think again about letting your kids run a YouTube channel.
And somebody, David Brady, in the discussion actually kind of emphasized that. He just said, no. Read the YouTube terms of service. Under 13 is a no-go. So you may have issues there. This may be something where you just want to do a little local thing, set up a camera and set up something and record them for yourself. Don't let them out. Let them get some experience in how it works. I know when my son was in that age category, the school did a little project, and Mike was the 5th grade weatherman at some point. So more schools are doing little internal, it doesn't go out to the web things as people are talking about. He really enjoyed that. It really helped him understand more about how production of this stuff works. But I'm agreeing. I think 12 and 9, unless you're really controlling it, is a little bit questionable. Tony, you had a follow-up, and so everybody else wants to get on this too. So Tony, your thoughts and follow-up?
Absolutely. So, from the legal standpoint, absolutely, that is a question mark, and I'm glad that Jesse raised that. I was speaking from the standpoint of actually being able to do it. The fact of the matter is that all the concerns that were raised are legitimate, and so maybe you turn it around, you flip it, you make them the production team. You do the YouTube broadcast and let them learn how to use StreamYard, Zoom, whatever equipment you decide to embrace, and you sharing whatever you want to. You can talk about how to parent children that are very inquisitive and want to do interesting things. And then talk about how you are embracing those things in your channel, and you have 10 and 12-year-olds producing the producers of your content. That would be a good way to go.
Alexander Knight, your thoughts?
Yeah, I support doing things locally. I have 2 nephews. They're 9 years old. They really wanted to do this kind of thing. And so what they wanted to do was basically play a video game on the PlayStation and then kind of talk to the audience and give tips and stuff like that. So we just recorded it locally, and then we critiqued it after, and they had a lot of fun. And I think they were perfectly satisfied with that. So that's the way I would go.
Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to point out that it's beyond the terms of service for YouTube, but you have to be 13 or older. And between 13 and 17, you have to have parental supervision and parental approval before you can even get a channel on YouTube. There is YouTube for Kids, which is stuff that's produced for children by adults. But you could have children in your adult-produced stuff, but they're very much stricter terms of service on the YouTube for Kids because it can't be clickbaity. Has very high guardrails on it on what you can submit to be on a channel for YouTube for Kids. It's much closer, has much closer scrutinization by the community than regular YouTube. But yeah, as everyone said, you could have them, work with a camcorder or their phones and just tape stuff locally that you can get them to rehearse and practice. And when they get really good, when they're 13 or 14, then you might think about letting them have a channel. But I'd be careful about letting them have their own channel unsupervised, especially.
Yeah, I think until they're 30, 35, not having an unsupervised channel might be a good thing. Anyway, let's go on to the next question. Good discussion, though. Thank you, Mike.
Remember, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Yeah,
that's true. All right, next question.
John Fisher in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma is asking, I need a Thunderbolt 4 dock with 3+ USB-C Thunderbolt ports, 1 gigabit per second plus Ethernet, and 1 HDMI port. Bonus points if it's travel friendly. Kicker, work will pay for it if it's $300 USD or less. Any recommendations from the panel?
In terms of Thunderbolt 4 docks, my biggest successes have always been with the OWC line of products. Now, I'm questioning whether or not I think maybe the travel little dock is around $300, and I've had good success with that. It doesn't have a ton of ports, but it has enough. It has, I think, a gigabit Ethernet port. It has an HDMI for sure. The newest versions, I'm sure, have switched over to USB-C, so maybe take a look at that. There are other companies that make fine Thunderbolt docks, and so you might want to look at Calrec and I can't remember any of the others, but off the top of my head, everything I've seen engineered from OWC has been first-rate and has worked for me. And I think every device I've ever bought from them still does what they're supposed to do. Some of them are a little obsolete now just because they weren't as capable as their products evolved. But Alexander, what do you think?
Yeah, I would look at this one from OWC. This is a Thunderbolt 4 dock. It's an 11-port Thunderbolt dock, $229.99 USD, and if you look at the back, not including the power port, you have at least 3 Thunderbolt ports on there, plus you have Ethernet, plus you have USB Type A. I'm not seeing HDMI, but you can also remember you can get USB-C to HDMI adapters as well, so that's well under $300.
There you go. Hopefully that takes care of things, John. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, I've sent this out to teachers arguing over kids learning real-world tools. Do you see any glaring oversights?
Courtney, you want to start us off here?
I didn't see any glaring oversights because it hit all the majors, Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, Resolve, Lightworks, Vegas Pro. Even I don't even know very many people are using Vegas Pro, and of course Avid Media Composer, which is used mainly for television these days, and some films. I think more of a problem in trying to train children on all of these platforms is they're going to become too confused, too stratified, because they all have their different protocols and different keystrokes and shortcuts. And, once they understand basic nonlinear editing, which they can do from Vegas Pro or Final Cut Pro, any of those, then what they want to do is, instead of trying to learn all of them, go to a place where they think they want to work and find out what platform that company is using, and then train extensively on that platform, because that's going to be your best bet as far as education goes, because I think you'll become more distracted and more confused by learning 6 different platforms instead of concentrating on the one that you're primarily, hopefully, going to work under.
Jesse Kester.
I'm not sure what the debate is. The list, the article that you sent looks very comprehensive, and it covers all the basics and all the not so basics. There shouldn't be a debate. Give them the top shelf stuff straight away. Give them Premiere Pro, give them Resolve, give them Final Cut X. Let them learn the actual software. Whatever you give a kid, they'll learn it. If you give them the fake light version, they'll learn the fake light version. If you give them the real deep version, they'll learn the real deep version. Give them the real stuff.
Courtney, you wanted to come back in?
One thing I just forgot to mention is I don't know if I'd get them too involved in things that are not cross-platform. So Final Cut is one of the few that is not cross-platform in that list.
And my advice actually is to have them think a little bit about the new personal device platforms. If they want to learn, I just have the sneaking suspicion that 5 years from now, these systems on both the Mac and PC side that are using phones in terms and a little switcher in the iOS kind of world, or whatever the equivalent is on the PC side, there's a lot of capability there, and they're not overly complicated. And I think it's a great little way to learn things like switching and editing and stuff like that without having to have desktop hardware necessarily. And I just think it's a classroom boon, because these are the kids are going to be shooting on their phones. I mean, they're just going to be. That's how almost all people now get into video editing, is shoot on their phones, and they want to get into editing with those. And the fact that you can also edit on your phones or tablets of some sort, and I'm talking mostly about tablet-based systems, I just think that's a wave of the future, rather than I need a big desktop computer and I need camcorders and I need to do it the old way. I might turn out to be wrong about that, but that's my thinking right now. Next question.
Next question is from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. What are your thoughts on using the Allen Heath CQ-18T for a digital mixer newbie?
Alexander, what do you think?
Yeah, I think these are really excellent. And, it used to be that the QSC Touch Mix series was the go-to touchscreen mixer, but I'm not a fan of those. They're quite old now, and the touchscreen on those is not very responsive. However, I've got my hands on one of these, and it's an excellent sounding mixer. The preamps sound great, effects great, really easy to use touchscreen interface that, unlike the Touch Mix, is very responsive. So it's just packed with a lot of features. I'll just quickly show it here. $11.99 USD, lots of inputs, lots of aux outputs, and just a really robust, solid build quality as typical that comes from Allen and Heath. So I'll have to do a bit more of a deep dive with this, because I haven't actually used it live yet, just tested it in limited circumstances. But it looks like a great product. And you can also get rack ears for these as well, so you can put this into a rack if you need to.
Nice. Next question.
David Brady in New York City is asking, are there any apps or tools that can help visualize where XY coordinates are in a video? I'm a visual thinker, and being able to see it as it relates to a frame would help.
Courtney, do you have a solution for him?
I'm not sure about XY coordinates in a video. Maybe any of the 3D animation tools, Fusion, anything that animates in 3D, or you could use Tinkercad. It's available online. It gives you a work plane and the ability to think about and move about in 3D space, and you can even move dimensionally with XY coordinates and size stuff based on different coordinates. So. And it gives you, distances moved, things like that. So it's pretty good at getting you accustomed to editing and moving things in 3D space and the camera point of view, since you can move the camera around to view that from a lot of different directions. So maybe that, if you have spatial problems, you might use that for doing that. I'm not sure about using it for XY coordinates in video. X is pan, Y is tilt.
Jesse?
I'm also not exactly sure what you're trying to do, but this is one of the most natural things about working in DaVinci Resolve. I've got a 1920 by 1080 timeline here, and we have an image of a blue nebula. And right now it is centered in the image, and you'll see that our position is 0 and 0. If we were to start sliding this over to the side, you'll see that when we get to 1920, we are off the frame. And if we're going to go the other direction, when we get to positive 19, well, that was negative 1920. When we get to positive, it's out of the frame again. Same is true for the y-axis. So this might be the type of layout that works with your brain, and I would try playing around with different video layers and different video files, different timeline resolutions, to get a feel for how the position and the anchor point relate to each other in this numeric layout.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking of something along exactly the same lines. What I would do in Final Cut, and I'm sure this works in all the other ones as well, is I would create probably a little circular target thing that has a slightly bigger, maybe yellow thing, and then a black dot in the center of it. I would bring that in a secondary storyline or on top of my things, and then I would punch in the numbers exactly as Jesse showed. You have coordinates, how far to the left of the center, how far to the right of center. If you set it up so that it starts at the 0 in a 1920 by 1080 or a larger raster. I mean, the point is that the numbers are going to change depending on the resolution of the screen you're trying to move a dot around in, but you'll suddenly get a real good sense of, if I move it 540 dots to the right and 1100 down, where does that target show up? And if I put it on a higher res raster, that whole thing is going to shift because that many dots, that many pixels of movement in a bigger raster is a different result than if it's in a standard 1920 1080. So I would use a little temporary tool like that to get my brain around how many numbers do I have to add to get it to where my eye tells me I want it to go. And after a little bit of that, I think you'll start to understand the geometry of the XY coordinates on a screen. That's how I would approach it. Maybe that's not the best way, but that's one way. Next question.
Jerry Hoyle in Wesley Chapel, North Carolina, looking for a bass boost in a 12x14 movie room. Any suggestions for a bang-for-buck 8-inch subwoofer?
Alexander, what do you think?
Okay, I'm going to give you two suggestions. One is going to fall into the bang-for-buck category, but the first one, by far the best, you got to look at Rel. Rel makes some of the best subwoofers. They make a small little 8-inch that when you hear this thing, if you can find a dealer that sells these products, if you can listen to this, you will be stunned at how good the low end is from that tiny little box. I think they're a little over $2,000 just for that little 8-inch woofer, so they're not cheap. On the budget end, though, I would look at Klipsch because they make some decent stuff. Not as good as Rel, but affordable, decent sounding stuff.
Courtney.
That's what I was going to suggest. The Klipsch, not $2,000, not $1,000, but $179 for a 10-inch subwoofer with Klipsch, and that I think includes a digital amplifier. So, that might be a good choice for you for 12.5, 16-inch subwoofer Klipsch. They sound pretty good. Not as good as the high-end audiophile versions, but for a media room, perfectly fine.
All right, let's go to the next question.
From the QR code, Chester Sweeney's back from Las Vegas, Nevada. In a scenario where you are given a small empty building, solar-powered heavily, and $10,000 to make a church for the locals, how would you build it?
My brain immediately said, as safely as possible. A good little bit of that $10,000 is going to go into making sure that if you have a building that you're bringing the public into, that everything in terms of fire code, ingress, egress, everything having to do with public safety is spent for first. If you don't get that right, all the rest of the things I would be... you want to make sure you pass all the local codes and things like that. As to stuff on that, let's go to everybody. We'll start with Alexander, go to Tony after that. Alexander, take it away.
I think this is a trick question because I don't see how you could do anything for $10,000. I mean, the PA system alone, you said empty buildings, so you need chairs, you need internet, you need infrastructure. Like, I don't see how you could do this for $10,000. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. Tony, what are you thinking?
I absolutely agree with that. It's kind of funny because the house of worship that I'm dealing with right now is actually in the process of building a building, and they want it to be multi-use. And so right now we're looking at least a minimum of $2 million. And that is not even going to be adequate in terms of we have had in the past, we've done actual Christian performances, and we've been renting theaters. And local theater rental can range anywhere from $500 on the low end up to $1,300 just for 2 hours. And that's an unrealistic expectation in terms of $10,000 to do that. So I'm going to say you might be able to use $10,000 as part of the audio system, but I just don't see it.
One of the comments in the chat was, where was the one I just saw? Oh, yeah. I have close to $10,000 worth of solar on my RV. So it's just realistically placing the cost. So something that you've got a pretty big undertaking going on there. And so I think you're going to have to be a little more realistic about budgets. I mean, yeah, you could throw some PA speakers and something with a microphone and a bunch of folding chairs. And I think you would get close to that just doing that with nothing else. And that's not going to be a very easy facility to get to sound right and the rest. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, Popular Science says that AI has tools which let you clone yourself. What are these tools and how do they work?
Jesse, start us off.
I think the kind of implied use for this is content generation for social media feeds. And I kind of got two questions. Number one is, does the world really need more you? I don't mean that personally to you. I mean that to everyone. And the other question I have is, like, if you aren't willing to take the time to say it yourself, why should I take the time to listen myself?
Courtney.
This is very dangerous. XMe is the name of the product that they're promoting on this Popular Science article. It's it basically lets you upload video of yourself talking for at least 11 seconds. It's an $89 lifetime subscription for this thing. So then it lets you be able to post videos just by entering text to have you be a spokesperson on camera. This seems to be like it could be, they're pushing it for educators, could, deliver lesson plans to their students virtually, et cetera, et cetera. This seems very dangerous. In fact, Microsoft Research came out with VASA 1, which is audio-driven talking faces generated in real time. And if you go look at their samples, these are artificially generated faces. But if you look at them and listen to them, I won't play them here, but it's amazing. The lip sync, the emotion, it derives the emotion from the audio track and animates from just a single still. It doesn't even need video. From a single still, it realistically animates those faces. You would not be able to tell them from a real person if you saw them. This comes out of Microsoft Research in China, and they are definitely afraid to release this because of the implications of how it could be exploited for evil. And they have not figured out how to put, firewalls around it to prevent it from being used to spoof people, to scam people, there's a million ways you could use a tool like this because it can generate sync video with perfectly good lip sync in any language in real time with 179 millisecond delay. That's less than a quarter of a second. So you could just feed a live feed in from somebody else. It'll change the voice it could change the voice and animate a perfectly believable image in real time. So it's going to be a long time before something like this escapes. It's going to have a lot of guardrails.
Jesse, you wanted to come back in on it?
Yeah, and I'd like to welcome to the New Speak Dictionary the newest entry, and that is a lifetime subscription. When I was growing up, that was called a purchase. I don't know why lifetime subscription is a new term.
It's interesting. I loved Popular Science as a kid. It was fun to watch that, but the PopSci, the website version of it, has definitely gone a little bit wacky. Some of the things that I see, I don't know why, my feed occasionally gets a thing from them, and their headlines always seem about 70% clickbait and about 30% actual science. So who knows? Courtney, you wanted to follow up too?
Yeah, they call it a lifetime subscription because it's, if you read the fine print, I think it's the lifetime of the company, which will be about 3 weeks based on the number of lawsuits that are going to be filed.
Okay. We're about to get ready for our second hour here. I have a few announcements to make. Thursday. It is Thursday, and that means the Mimo Live Lab with Oliver Breidenbach afterwards at 11 a.m. today. I wanted to give a little promo to our Monday night extra hours. If you haven't been watching, Grant Whitehead and the team have been doing something. For those of you who are not in the U.S., on the other side of the planet, as Grant is, he's down in Australia, we're trying to make sure we have content for people who may find this time for this show inconvenient. So check out Monday night, our extra hours with Grant Whitehead. Friday, we're talking dongles, adapters, and cables. Oh my. Tomorrow, that's what the show is going to concentrate on, kind of a fun show. So if you want to connect stuff to other stuff, tomorrow is your day. Saturday, we're doing an hour of open questions using our new back-end VisVector system. So we're kind of shaking that out, and it's going well. And Sunday, as always, is introspection. Since Alex is traveling, I'm hosting on Sunday. So drop by and say hi.